Chronicle of a Death Foretold is a novel published by Gabriel Garcia Marquez in 1981, and it's commonly studied in Year 12 text response. Today, we'll be breaking down a Chronicle of a Death Foretold essay topic using our Think and Execute strategy, which is a step-by-step technique to help you write better essays. By the way, today's essay was written by one of our wonderful tutors, so thank you, Ellie. Within the Think strategy, we have 3 steps, or ABC. Analyze, brainstorm, create a plan. Let's get into it. So the prompt is, in Chronicle of a Death Foretold, the murder highlights the failings of society. Discuss. Step 1, analyze. The first thing you'll identify is that this is a theme-based prompt with the keywords being failings of society and murder. Although the main theme is societal failure, this is a discuss prompt, which is one of the most flexible types of essay questions. It gives you an opportunity to discuss overlapping themes in order to achieve a more in-depth analysis. The other keyword in the prompt is murder, which relates more broadly to the theme of violence. It's important that you address the essay prompt holistically in each paragraph, meaning that in each paragraph you explore the correlation between murder and societal failure, rather than taking one paragraph to look at violence and another to look at the failings of society. When we start brainstorming the types of societal failure, you'll find it helpful to identify how each of them relate to the murder to ensure that each aspect of the prompt is being addressed. Due to the open-ended nature of the prompt, it'll be easy to stray off topic, especially when exploring related themes in the body paragraphs. So it's important that you bring your discussion back to the essay prompt and the main theme to avoid delving into a discussion that steers the essay off topic. Step 2, brainstorm. In order to respond to this essay prompt with 3 distinct and in-depth paragraphs, we'll start by brainstorming possible meanings of the keywords within the context of the text and the authorial intention. Considering that the novella is set in a small Colombian town, the society referenced in the prompt can be interpreted as Colombian society. Though the novella was set in the 1950s, it was published in 1981, meaning that the message Garcia Marquez conveys through the novella is intended for a more modern Colombian society than is presented in the story. In the context of the text, examples of the failings of society are the fixation on honor, the prevalence of machismo, masculine pride, the power imbalance between genders and classes, religious pollution, incompetence of authority figures and the justice system, and the normalization of violence in the aftermath of La Valencia, the Colombian civil wars between 1948 and 1958, and the subsequent guerrilla wars. So how are these elements of Colombian society portrayed to be failings by the retelling of the murder in the novella? Well, the fixation on honor in Colombian society gives rise to the negligence of individuals' moral responsibilities. So in terms of examples, despite knowing of the Vicario brothers' intention to murder Santiago Nassar, the townspeople refuse to take action to save him from a violent death, as they believe it's the Vicario brothers' duty to avenge their sister's honor. And the townspeople use the sanctity of honor to justify their own negligence in preventing the murder. The prevalence of machismo in patriarchal society can result in unfit leaders in positions of power. So Don Lázaro Aponte, mayor and colonel, is portrayed as incompetent in both the prevention and the inquisition of the murder. The mayor's military experience and machismo values make the townspeople respect him as a leader despite his inexperience in matters of the law, highlighting the appointment of unfit leaders due to the prevalence of masculine pride. There's also an incompetence in authority figures in policing those who use brutality to settle disputes. Religious pollution refers to the hypocrisy of a predominantly Catholic society that condones violence against others. So Clotilda instructs the Vicario brothers to leave Santiago Nassar for later out of respect for his grace the bishop, highlighting the performative nature of the townspeople's Catholicism, considering that they care more about respecting the ritualistic aspects of their religion than acting morally and protecting Santiago Nassar. And the bishop, a symbol of religious and moral purity, is disconnected from the townspeople, conveying that despite their reverence and devotion, they are disconnected from the Catholic Church because of their immorality, by allowing violence to be enacted without stepping in. Step 3, create a plan. Paragraph 1. A society that values protecting honor above all else is in danger of allowing individuals to neglect their moral duty of protecting others, using honor as a justification for their own complacency. Paragraph 2. The permittance of Santiago Nassar's murder by authority figures was an inevitability in a town that equates masculine pride with leadership skills. Paragraph 3. The townspeople's inability to adhere to Catholic values gives rise to their callous regard for Santiago's life. And then we come to execute. Now it's time to write the essay. Examining the dynamics of a small Colombian town dictated by Catholicism yet riddled with violence, Chronicle of a Death Foretold explores the moral failings of Colombian society as the narrator attempts to make sense of the inexplicable circumstances surrounding the murder of Santiago Nassar 27 years prior. In his pseudo-journalistic reconstruction of the crime, Garcia Marquez cautions against the dangers of a society that's fixated on misplaced values. Condemning Colombian society for their fixation on honor, Marquez contends that an excessive focus on honor can cause individuals to excuse themselves from fulfilling their moral duty. Further highlighting the dangerous nature of Colombian society's obsession with honor, Marquez illustrates how the equation of masculine pride to leadership skills acts to corrupt authority, hence allowing crime to infiltrate a community. Marquez highlights the superficial nature of religion in Colombian society, conveying how a failure to adhere to Catholic values causes individuals to neglect the importance of human life. Marquez ultimately contends that Santiago Nassar's murder was inevitable in a town corrupted by immorality. As for our annotations, for this first one, the opening sentence of the essay is often referred to as a universal statement. Its purpose is to provide context about the text. For example, when and where it's set, who the intended audience is, and what kinds of key ideas or themes it explores. A text often has too many context points to include, so it's important to consider what's most relevant to the prompt and the contention of the essay. As for 2, 3, and 4, another key element of an introduction is outlining the key ideas of the body paragraphs using one sentence for each to make it clear to the reader what the structure of the essay will be. This is called signposting. As for number 5, the author of this essay has included an overall contention at the end of the introduction to tie the 3 signposting sentences together and link them back to the prompt. Castigating Colombian society for their misguided prioritization of the protection of honor, Garcia Marquez's depiction of the townspeople's failure to fulfill their moral duty of protecting Santiago Nassar warns against the dangers of using honor as a justification for one's own complacency. As the Vicario brothers search for someone to stop the crime without bringing any shame on them, looking to the townspeople for absolution from the murderous obligation imposed on them by patriarchal society, they're left alone to face the responsibility of protecting their sister's honor. Garcia Marquez condemns the townspeople for their negligence, conveying that a society's acceptance of violence deems them as culpable for the crime as the perpetrators. The guilt of the townspeople is illustrated as the magistrate's notes regarding the crime are described by the narrator as being scribed in red ink, making it as if they were written in blood. Garcia Marquez metaphorically conveys the responsibility of the townspeople, as the blood of Santiago Nassar is on their hands rather than the Vicario brothers. This idea is further instilled as, at the time of the murder, the knife keeps coming out clean, metaphorically conveying Garcia Marquez's views that Santiago Nassar's death is due to the failings of the townspeople rather than the perpetrators themselves, who have no blood on their hands. Garcia Marquez illustrates the consequences of Colombian society's prioritization of honor, as the townspeople console themselves with the pretext that affairs of honor are sacred monopolies, hence absolving them of any guilt for their negligence in the face of brutal violence. Garcia Marquez expresses his distaste for the wrongful justification of individuals' acts of inhumanity for the sake of protecting honor, cautioning Colombian society against valuing the sanctity of honor above the sanctity of human life. Okay, back to our annotations. Number 6. When analysing quotes, it's really useful to consider the what, the how, and the why. The what is what has been said. The quote, by who and in what context. The how is what language techniques has the author used. For example, can you identify any literary techniques using meta-language? In this instance, it was a metaphor. The why is about considering what the authorial intention is, meaning what message the author wishes to convey to the audience. 7. When embedding quotes, you can alter the sentence structure of the quote using ellipses and square brackets to make the quote fit and flow within your own writing. Number 8, it's important to consider what the author's intended impact on the audience is. By understanding who the intended audience of the text is and what the author's views and values are, you can analyze what the author intends for their audience to take away from the events of the text and consider in relation to their own lives. Further expressing his disapproval of Colombian society's obsession with honor, Garcia Marquez contends that the permittance of Santiago Nassar's murder by authority figures was an inevitability in a town that equates masculine pride with leadership skills. Set against the backdrop of La Valencia, Chronicle of Death Foretold highlights the consequence of celebrating brute force and excessive masculinity on the moral fabric of a society. Don Lázaro Aponte, the town's mayor, is portrayed as incompetent in the prevention of the murder as he regards the incident with a casual attitude. As a former troop commander, it is the colonel's military experience that renders him capable of fulfilling his role as mayor in the eyes of the townspeople, illustrating the prevalence of machismo in a post-Civil War Colombian society. Garcia Marquez conveys that, in actuality, masculine pride can cause authority figures to fail to fulfill their role as the colonel is too conceited to ask for help when he has no experience in matters of the law. Garcia Marquez highlights the dangers of equating leadership skills with displays of masculinity through his portrayal of Santiago Nassar's death as inevitable. Employing a non-linear narrative structure, Marquez invites the readers to consider Santiago Nassar's death as a certainty, as they're informed from the first line of the novella that the Vicario brothers are going to kill him. Marquez urges the audience to consider how a death so clearly foretold was allowed to happen, hence highlighting the corruption of those who hold power in the town. Garcia Marquez cautions Colombian society against the blind following of leaders who display masculine pride, contending that this does not necessarily equip them for their role. Number 9. To achieve better flow in your essays, you can link your topic sentences back to the previous paragraph. Number 10. When brainstorming your analysis, it's important not to overlook minor characters in the text, such as Don Lázaro Aponte, as they can strengthen your analysis. 11. When relevant, further context can be incorporated into your body paragraphs in order to unpack authorial intention and to demonstrate to your assessor your knowledge of the text. 12. Nonlinear narrative structure is an example of a narrative mode. Narrative modes are important to identify and analyze, as the way an author structures their text impacts the way that it affects readers. We go more in depth in our blog post, Meta-Language Word Banks for Books, which I will link below if you want to find out more. Highlighting the superficial nature of religion in Colombian society, Garcia Marquez contends that the townspeople's inability to adhere to Catholic values gives rise to their callous regard for Santiago's life. Garcia Marquez explores the performative nature of religion in Colombian society through his characterization of the bishop, a religious leader and pillar of morality, as disengaged from the lives and wrongdoings of the townspeople. The bishop gives a mechanical blessing without malice or inspiration, emphasizing the disconnect between the townspeople and the Catholic Church, as religious leadership separates itself from the town despite the townspeople considering themselves to be devoutly faithful. As the fleeting illusion of the bishop disappears, all that is left is the uproar of the roosters, a biblical symbol for denial and the need for repentance, symbolically alluding to the guilt of the unvirtuous townspeople the bishop is abandoning. Despite the town's need for redemption, the bishop won't even get off the boat, illustrating how the church has little hope for the indecent citizens of the town. Chronicle of a Death Foretold depicts the Catholic leadership disengaging from a society corrupted by moral decay, inviting the Colombian audience to consider their own failure to live out the Catholic values that they preach. The consequences of this religious pollution are illustrated as Clotilda tells the Vicario brothers to leave Santiago Nassar for later out of respect for His Grace the Bishop. Marquez intends to convey how the superficial nature of religion in Colombian society causes individuals to value ritual over human life, hence perpetuating an environment that allows for the violent murder of Santiago Nassar to be realized without intervention. Garcia Marquez warns Colombian society against the dangers of practicing their faith in a superficial manner, cautioning that such practices can lead to the perpetuation of violence. 13. Symbols are an effective literary technique to analyze, however, their meaning and intention might not be immediately clear when reading a text. Researching what a symbol is widely accepted to mean can help you form a view on what the author intends to convey through its inclusion. 14. When analysing the intended impact of a quote, it's important to use a variety of vocabulary such as illustrates, highlights, conveys, or depicts. This helps avoid your essay sounding repetitive, and it shows that you have a clear understanding of what the author's intended impact on their audience is. Garcia Marquez castigates Colombian society for their corruption of values, conveying that violent murder is an inevitability in a patriarchal society riddled with religious pollution and machismo ideals. Failing to give the reader a clear explanation of the events leading up to the murder of Santiago Nassar, or the extent to which certain characters are culpable, Garcia Marquez urges Colombian society to consider the destructive nature and potential consequences of their own behaviour. Finally, to annotate our conclusion, number 15. A conclusion should include a brief summary of the ideas touched on throughout the essay. However, unlike the introduction, having a whole sentence for each idea is not necessary, as it's important not to become too repetitive. 16. In order to finish the essay strongly, you can include a key message that you think that the author intends for their audience to take away. In this case, Ellie suggested that Garcia Marquez intends for his audience to consider the societal failures that led to the murder, whether they find parallels to these failures in their own lives, and what the potential consequences of them could be. We also have a blog post on 5 tips for a mic drop worthy conclusion that I will link below. And there you have it. Drop us a comment if you have any questions, or let us know if there are any other particular texts you want us to cover.